Our group is doing class conflict versus social organism.
When looking up the definition of class conflict, we found Kligek and Wilkes' definition, which said, within society there are classes of people defined by the kinds of property they own and the kinds of work they engage in. These classes are in contention and conflict with each other. They struggle for dominance and control, with a consciousness defined by their position, putting politics into all social life. When looking at the idea of social organism, we found Spencer's definition that said, the main purpose of the social organism metaphor is to emphasize the non-mechanical, non-intentional, yet mutually coordinated character of the processes which give rise to and sustain any given society and its institutions, and the persuasiveness in any complex society of social orders and structures which are, in Hayek's recent language, the result of human action but not of human design. The metaphor also serves to highlight further parallels between the physiological and the economic divisions of labor.
The translated definition of class conflict is where people are divided into groups based on their socioeconomic position. This can be based on their job, income, or various other factors. These classes are in a perpetual state of struggle over power and control. For example, in class, we learned about the struggle between the capitalists and the proletariats. The translation of social organism are groups in society that work to maintain the stability and structure of society. These groups all work together to achieve a common goal by putting aside their own interests and working towards the group's best interest.
Here we have an illustration of class conflict, left, and social organism, right. The illustration on the left primarily depicts conflict theory's application of class conflict to capitalism. In capitalism, the capitalists and proletariats struggle for the economy's rewards. This illustration depicts how the capitalists are able to take the surplus of a worker's labor in order to gain more capital. According to class conflict, this scenario would eventually lead to inequality and ultimately a struggle for power between classes. The illustration on the right primarily depicts the social organism as a sort of unifying concept. Individuals work together in a unified group in order to achieve a common interest, even if it does not necessarily benefit oneself. The objective of this theory is to maintain stability and structure. In this slide, we are going to analyze class conflict and social organism by comparing and contrasting the two. To begin, both are social theories that attempt to explain the social nature of humanity. However, both offer radically different ideas concerning this social nature. They also support the idea that people belong to groups, and that these people are born into social and historical structures over which they have no control. Class conflict, which was popularized by Marx, groups people into classes based on social position rather than grouping people into a unifying single interest group, as in social organism, as discussed by Durkheim in our reading. While social organism focuses on the unity of society and working to maintain stability, class conflict looks to the struggles between classes, which arise from inequality. Consciousness, which is the effect of one's social position, and is a person's internalized beliefs and values as a result of a long process of socialization, may help to explain why there is class conflict. For example, some upper-class schools teach this to criticize ideas, whereas lower-class schools teach children to obey. We can see how this leads to the creation of classes, as children are taught to think differently. One may argue, however, that the social and historical structures encourage us all to work towards a common interest to a degree. Because each of these ideas can be applied to different situations, the debate between the two is too broad to be settled. Arguments for each side of this debate include the Occupy Wall Street protesters, who point out there have not been any increases in real wages over the past 5 decades, despite increases in production by workers. However, a counter-argument would be the reduction in infant mortality. Thus sums up our analysis of these two different approaches to the social nature of humanity. Thank you for listening.